Sir, stop right there. We need to talk to you.
I need to get to my car. I am freezing. I just pulled a child out of the lake.
That is what we need to discuss. What were you doing with that child in the water?
What was I doing? I was saving him. He was drowning.
The circumstances seem suspicious.
I know I'm on a freezing water to this child. Perform CPR, brings him back to life and gets.
Is that what happened here? Adult male alone with children in a deserted area. Child in distress, sir.
What? No, officer, that's not what happened at all.
If you come across this video, comment telling me where you're watching from. The child went under without a sound. 1 second, Kyrie Jackson saw a small figure near the edge of the lake, shoes half off, toes testing the water. The next, the surface closed over the child's head and the ripples spread outward, fast and uneven. No screaming, no dramatic splash, just a sudden absence where a child had been. Someone yelled, "Hey, hey!" Another voice followed, sharper this time. "There's a kid in the water." Kyrie didn't think. He was already moving before the words finished landing. He dropped what he was holding and ran, shoes scraping against the dirt as he closed the distance. The child's arms broke the surface once, flailing, then disappeared again. The water wasn't deep far out, but near the edge it dropped faster than people expected. Kyrie had seen that before. Lakes trick you like that. He hit the water hard, cold shock punching the air out of his chest. The chill wrapped around his legs and pulled downward. He pushed through it, eyes open, scanning through the murk. The child was just ahead, sinking at an angle, small hands clawing at nothing. Kyrie reached, missed, kicked harder, and grabbed fabric. He pulled up with both arms, bracing his feet against the slope beneath him. The child coughed as soon as their face broke the surface. Water spilled from their mouth in short bursts. Kyrie held them tight against his chest, keeping their head back as he worked toward shore. Someone else waded in from the side and helped steady them. Hands reached out. Someone took the child from him. The kid was crying now, loud and raw, which was a good sign. Kyrie stayed in the water for a second longer, breathing hard, heart hammering in his ears. His arms shook from the cold and the sudden effort. He climbed out and sat on the grass, water dripping from his sleeves, chest still heaving. Someone said, "You did good, man." Someone else said, "Thank God." The child's parent ran up and dropped to their knees, pulling the kid close, checking their face, their arms, their legs. "Are you okay?" they kept asking. The child nodded between sobs. A woman nearby said, "He saved your baby." She pointed at Kyrie. Kyrie stood up slowly. His clothes clung to him, heavy and cold. He wiped water from his eyes and looked around, making sure the kid was still breathing, still upright. Everything felt loud and quiet at the same time. His pulse hadn't slowed yet. That's when he heard the sirens. At first, it was distant, easy to ignore. Then it grew, louder, sharper, cutting through the chatter. A few people turned their heads toward the road. Someone muttered, "Cops." Kyrie didn't think much of it. He assumed they were there for the kid. That made sense. Someone must have called it in as an emergency. He stepped back to give space, hands hanging loose at his sides. The patrol car rolled up fast and stopped hard. The door opened before the engine was fully quiet. Officer Jalen Brooks stepped out, already scanning the scene. His eyes moved from the lake to the small crowd to Kyrie. Still wet, standing off to the side. "What happened here?" Brooks asked. "A kid fell in," someone said. He pulled him out. Brooks looked at Kyrie. "You," he said, "come here." Kyrie walked over without hesitation. "The child slipped," he said. "I saw them go under. I went in and got them out." Brooks glanced past him toward the child, who was now wrapped in a jacket someone had handed over. The kid was still crying but upright, clinging to their parent. Brooks turned back to Kyrie. "Who called this in?" "I don't know," Kyrie said. "It all happened fast." Brooks nodded slowly, like he was listening, but his eyes stayed fixed. "Turn around for me." Kyrie blinked. "What? Turn around?" Brooks repeated. "Hands behind your back." Kyrie felt the first real flicker of confusion. "Why?" "We just need to make sure everyone's safe," Brooks said. His voice was calm, controlled. "Turn around." A few people spoke up at once. "He saved the kid. He just pulled him out. There's no problem here." Brooks raised a hand slightly without looking at them. "I've got it," he said. Then to Kyrie, firmer now, turn around. Kyrie hesitated for half a second, not out of defiance, but because the request didn't line up with reality. He was still dripping water. His sleeves were soaked. The grass beneath his feet was dark where he'd stood. None of this made sense. "I didn't do anything wrong," Kyrie said. His voice stayed even. "You can talk to anyone here." They saw it. Brooks stepped closer. "Sir, I need you to cooperate." The space between them felt smaller all at once. Kyrie could hear his own breathing again, fast and shallow. He glanced around. The people who had been thanking him seconds earlier were now watching in silence. The child's parent looked torn, unsure whether to step in. Kyrie turned around. The cuffs clicked shut around his wrists before he could finish the motion. Cold metal bit into his skin. His shoulders tensed on instinct. "Hey," Kyrie said, "that's not necessary." Brooks guided him a step forward. "Just relax." "What are you doing?" someone shouted. "That's the guy who saved the kid." Brooks ignored them. He checked the cuffs and adjusted them tighter. Kyrie winced. His hands were already numb from the cold. "I need to understand why I'm being detained," Kyrie said. Brooks didn't answer right away. He led Kyrie a few feet away from the water, positioning him where the patrol car's camera had a clear view. "We got a call about a disturbance involving a child," Brooks said finally. "We're sorting it out." Kyrie shook his head slowly. "This isn't sorting anything out." The child's parent stepped forward now. "Officer, he didn't hurt my kid. He saved them." Brooks glanced at them briefly. "I'll speak with you in a moment," he said. Then back to Kyrie. "Do you have any weapons on you?" "No," Kyrie said. "I just jumped in a lake." Brooks did a quick pat down anyway, hands moving over soaked fabric. The cold made Kyrie shiver harder. His teeth chattered, and he tried to steady his breathing. The sirens cut off. The park felt too quiet again. Kyrie looked back toward the water. The surface was calm now, like nothing had happened. If not for his wet clothes and the cuffs on his wrists, it would have been easy to believe the whole thing was already over. Instead, it was just starting. Kyrie didn't think about the water temperature or how deep it was or who else was around. He saw the child's head dip under again, arms flailing once, then nothing, and his body moved before his mind caught up. Shoes hit the ground hard. Phone slipped from his hand. He heard someone shout behind him, a woman screaming the child's name, but it all flattened into noise as he ran. The edge of the lake crumbled a little under his foot when he pushed off. He didn't slow down. He didn't test the water. He didn't scan for help. He went straight in. The cold slammed into his chest and knocked the breath out of him. For half a second his body fought back, lungs seizing, instinct screaming to get out. Then he saw the child's shirt drifting just below the surface, darker now, pulling away from him, and that was enough to shut everything else off. He forced himself down, arms cutting through the water harder than he thought possible. It wasn't like the movies. The water wasn't clear. He couldn't see the bottom. Every kick stirred up mud, and his eyes burned. He reached out once and grabbed nothing, reached again and felt fabric slip through his fingers. Panic surged sharp and sudden. He went lower, ignoring the ache in his ears, ignoring the burn in his lungs. He caught the child by the arm. The kid was limp, heavier than Kyrie expected. Dead weight, pulling him down. Kyrie wrapped an arm around the child's chest and kicked upward, legs burning, lungs screaming. For a moment, he wasn't sure he'd make it. The surface felt too far away, the water pressing in from all sides. They broke through together. Kyrie sucked in air and coughed, keeping his grip tight as the child sputtered weakly. He shouted without thinking, a rough, raw sound. People were already moving toward the edge. Hands reached out. Someone grabbed the child under the arms and helped pull him up onto the bank. Kyrie followed, dragging himself out, water pouring off his clothes. He stayed low, one knee on the ground, one hand planted, chest heaving. The child was coughing now, sharp, wet sounds that cut through the chaos. A woman dropped to her knees beside him, crying, her hands shaking as she touched his face, his shoulders, checking that he was real. He was under, someone said. He was under for a while. Kyrie wiped water from his eyes and looked at the child. The kid's lips were pale, his eyes wide and unfocused, but he was breathing. That was the only thing that mattered. Kyrie felt a rush of relief, so strong it made his arms tremble. He backed away a step to give them space. He didn't want to crowd them. He didn't want attention. He stood there dripping, heart still racing, and tried to slow his breathing. Someone patted his shoulder. Someone else said, "You saved him, man." Kyrie nodded once, not trusting his voice. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt shaky and cold and aware of how close it had been. He kept seeing the child slipping deeper, the way the water swallowed him without warning. The thought sat heavy in his chest. A siren cut through the air. Kyrie looked up. The sound was distant at first, then closer. An ambulance, he assumed. Maybe police too. That was normal. That was fine. He expected questions, maybe a statement, maybe a quick check to make sure everyone was okay. He stepped farther back, giving the family room, rubbing his hands together to warm them. He didn't leave. It didn't occur to him to leave. He hadn't done anything wrong. He'd seen a kid drowning and jumped in. That was it. Simple. The sirens grew louder, then stopped. Doors slammed. Boots hit pavement. Voices sharpened, taking on that clipped, controlled edge Kyrie recognized even before he saw the uniforms. He stayed where he was, wet clothes clinging to him, water pooling at his feet. An officer moved toward the group by the lake, eyes scanning. Another spoke into a radio. The ambulance crew pushed through, kneeling beside the child, asking quick questions. The mother answered in broken sentences, pointing at the lake at Kyrie, at her son. "That's him," she said. He pulled him out. Kyrie met the officer's eyes for a second and gave a small nod. He expected a thank you or at least a neutral acknowledgement. Instead, the officer's expression tightened. "Sir," the officer said, stepping closer, "I need you to come over here." Kyrie did. He didn't hesitate. He didn't argue. He walked over, hands visible, posture open. He was still catching his breath. "What happened?" the officer asked. "He fell in," Kyrie said. His voice sounded rough. "I saw him go under. I went in and grabbed him." "Who are you?" to the child. "I'm not related. I was just here." "Doing what?" Kyrie blinked. "Just walking. I heard people yelling." The officer glanced at Kyrie's soaked clothes, then back at the lake. Another officer joined them, standing just off to the side, watching. Kyrie felt the shift then, subtle but unmistakable. The air changed. The relief he'd felt a minute earlier drained away, replaced by a familiar tension that settled in his shoulders. "Did you touch the child before he went in the water?" the first officer asked. "No," Kyrie said. "I didn't know him." "So, you're saying you saw him fall?" "Yes." "Did anyone see you jump in?" "Yes," Kyrie said, gesturing toward the small crowd. "They were right there." The officer didn't look at the crowd. He looked at Kyrie's hands, then at his face. "Why are you wet?" Kyrie stared at him for a second, not sure he'd heard correctly. "Because I went into the lake." The officer's jaw tightened. "Sir, I need you to stay right here." "I am," Kyrie said. "I'm not going anywhere." He meant it. He had no intention of leaving. He stood there, dripping, heart still pounding, trying to keep his voice steady. He could hear the child crying now, stronger, louder. That sound grounded him. The kid was alive. That was the point. But the questions kept coming, circling back on themselves. Where were you standing? How close were you? Why did you notice the child? Did you speak to him earlier? Each one chipped away at the moment Kyrie had just lived through, reframing it into something colder, something suspect. A man from the crowd spoke up. "I saw it. The kid fell. He jumped right in after him." Another voice followed. "Yeah, he didn't hesitate." The officer held up a hand without looking back. "I've got it." Kyrie felt a flicker of anger then, quick and hot. He pushed it down. He knew better than to react. He kept his hands visible, his movements slow. "I just want to make sure he's okay," Kyrie said, nodding toward the child. "He's being taken care of," the officer said. "Right now, I need you to answer my questions." Kyrie answered, calmly, clearly. He stuck to the facts. He didn't embellish. He didn't defend himself beyond what was necessary. He believed, still, that the truth would be enough. But he could feel it slipping, the way the officers stood now, positions tightening, one slightly behind him. The way the radios crackled with updates that didn't include his name as a rescuer. The way the looks from a few bystanders shifted from gratitude to confusion. He thought about how fast he'd moved when the child went under. No hesitation, no calculation, just action. He'd trusted that instinct, trusted that doing the right thing would land him on solid ground. Standing there, soaked and shivering, answering questions that felt less like curiosity and more like accusation, he realized how thin that ground could be. He didn't regret jumping in. Not for a second. Even as the tension climbed, even as the officers' voices hardened, the image of the child breathing on the bank stayed fixed in his mind. If he had to do it again, he would. But as one officer asked him to turn around for a moment, Kyrie felt the first real edge of fear cut through him. Not fear of the water, not fear of what he'd done, fear of what came next, and how quickly a split-second decision to save a life could be twisted into something else entirely. The sirens cut off all at once, leaving a hollow quiet that felt heavier than the noise. The lake went still again, broken only by the child's coughing and the low murmur of people who hadn't moved yet. Red and blue lights washed over wet grass, and faces turned toward the road. Kyrie stood a few steps back from the water, arms wrapped around himself, clothes sticking to his skin. He watched the ambulance crew kneel by the child, watched the mother grip her son's hand so tight her knuckles went white. He kept his distance. He didn't want to get in the way. 2 patrol cars rolled in behind the ambulance. Doors opened. Radios crackled. The officers didn't run. They walked with purpose, scanning, taking in the scene in quick slices. One of them spoke into his mic before his boots hit the ground. Possible drowning, he said. Child rescued. Scene secure. That word, secure, landed wrong. Kyrie felt it before anything else happened. An officer stepped toward the crowd and raised his voice. Everybody stay where you are. If you are involved, don't leave. Kyrie nodded and stayed put. A few people shifted, uneasily. Someone muttered, "He saved the kid," loud enough to be heard. The officer by the ambulance leaned in to listen as the medic spoke. The mother talked fast, words tumbling over each other, pointing toward the water, then toward Kyrie. The officer followed her finger and looked at Kyrie for the first time. The look wasn't grateful. It wasn't angry either. It was blank measuring. He walked over. "You," the officer said, "come here." Kyrie did. He moved slowly, hands open, palms visible. He'd learned that a long time ago, without anyone having to explain it. "What's your name?" the officer asked. "Kyrie Jackson." "Date of birth?" Kyrie told him. "Where do you live?" Kyrie answered, then stopped himself from adding anything else. He watched the officer write it down, watched the pen pause, then continue. "You're wet," the officer said. "Yes, sir." "Why?" Kyrie held his gaze. "I went into the lake." "Why did you go into the lake?" "To get the child." The officer nodded once, like he'd expected that answer, but hadn't decided what it meant yet. "Stand right here," he said, motioning to a spot a few feet away. "Don't move." Kyrie stepped where he was told. Another officer drifted closer, not speaking, just positioning himself behind Kyrie's right shoulder. Kyrie felt it like a weight. He kept his eyes forward. The ambulance doors closed partway as medics adjusted equipment. The child cried again, louder now, angry and alive. Kyrie felt his throat tighten. He focused on that sound. A man from the crowd spoke up. "Officer," he jumped right in. "We all saw it." The officer didn't turn. "Sir, I'll talk to you in a minute." "But..." "I said I'll talk to you in a minute." The man went quiet. Kyrie shifted his weight, then stopped himself. He didn't want to give anyone a reason to say he was nervous. He was nervous, but he didn't want it seen. Another officer approached, older, slower, with a calm voice that carried. He spoke briefly with the first officer, glancing between Kyrie and the lake. "What do we know?" the older officer asked. "Child fell in," the first officer said. "This man says he rescued him." "Says," the older officer repeated. The word hit Kyrie harder than he expected. "I did," Kyrie said. He kept his voice even. There are witnesses. We'll get to that, the older officer said. His tone wasn't hostile. It wasn't warm either. For now, we're figuring out what happened. Kyrie nodded. He understood the process. At least he thought he did. The older officer stepped away to speak with the medics. The first officer stayed put. Did you touch the child before he entered the water? The officer asked again. No. Did you speak to him? No. Did you know him? No. Why were you watching him? Kyrie frowned slightly. I wasn't watching him. I heard people yelling and saw him go under. So, you noticed him right away? Yes, because he was drowning. The officer's jaw tightened. He scribbled something, then looked up. Turn around for me. Kyrie hesitated for half a second, then did it. He faced the lake, the crowd, the ambulance lights reflecting off the water. He felt hands near his wrists, but not touching yet. Just relax, the officer said. You're not under arrest. Kyrie let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The officer checked Kyrie's pockets, quick and professional. Keys, wallet, nothing else. He stepped back, turned back around. Kyrie did. Across the way, the mother stood up, eyes red, face tight. She looked from her son to Kyrie, then toward the officers. He saved my baby, she said. Her voice cracked. Please. The older officer nodded at her. Ma'am, we're glad your son is okay. We just need to make sure we understand everything. She shook her head. He jumped in. He didn't even think. Kyrie felt a flicker of gratitude, then watched it fade as the officer turned back to him. We're going to need you to wait here while we talk to some people, the officer said. How long? Kyrie asked. As long as it takes. The crowd had gone quiet now. Phones were out. Someone was recording openly. Kyrie noticed, but didn't comment. He kept his eyes level, his posture still. The older officer returned. Ambulance is transporting, he said. Child stable. Kyrie closed his eyes for a second at the word stable, then opened them again. Good, the first officer said. He looked at Kyrie. You don't mind answering a few more questions at the station, do you? Kyrie blinked. The station? Just to clear some things up. I've answered your questions, Kyrie said carefully. I'm happy to stay here. The officer's expression hardened. That wasn't a request. Kyrie felt the shift again, sharper this time. The space around him felt smaller, like the air had thickened. I didn't do anything wrong, Kyrie said. He kept his voice calm, but it took effort. No one said you did, the officer replied. But we need to make sure. The older officer watched closely, saying nothing. From the crowd, a woman raised her voice. Why are you taking him? He saved the kid. The first officer turned. Ma'am, please step back. This doesn't make sense, someone else said. Kyrie looked at the lake again, at the spot where the child had gone under. It looked ordinary now, calm, like nothing had happened. Sir, the officer said, closer now. Turn around. Kyrie swallowed. He knew what came next, even if no one had said it yet. He turned. Cold metal touched his wrists. The click was loud in his ears, final. The handcuffs tightened, not painfully, but enough to be felt. What are you doing? Kyrie asked. His voice cracked despite his effort. Detaining you, the officer said. For questioning. For what? Kyrie asked. I pulled him out of the water. The officer guided him forward a step. We'll sort it out. The crowd erupted then. Shouts overlapped. This is wrong. You saw it. Let him go. Phones were fully up now, lenses pointed, recording everything. The mother cried out, Please don't do this. The older officer raised his hands. Everyone calmed down. Kyrie stood there, cuffed, water still dripping from his clothes, heart pounding in his ears. He looked at the officers, then at the people who had watched him jump in without thinking. Minutes earlier, he'd been a man acting on instinct. Now he was a suspect, held in place by plastic and metal. His story paused mid-sentence. As they walked him toward the patrol car, Kyrie kept replaying the moment the child went under. He held onto it, tight like proof, like something no one could take from him, even as the door opened and the lights kept flashing behind his eyes. Officer Jalen Brooks stepped closer, close enough that Kyrie could smell the faint scent of coffee on his breath. The questions stopped sounding like questions. They came slower now, deliberate, spaced out, each one landing heavier than the last. "Look at me," Brooks said. Kyrie lifted his head. The cuffs pulled at his wrists when he shifted. His shoulders were tight, not from resistance, but from trying to stay still. "You understand why we're here," Brooks said. It wasn't a question. "I understand a child almost drowned," Kyrie replied. "And I pulled him out." Brooks nodded once, like he'd heard this already and filed it somewhere else. "What I need you to understand is that we're responding to a call. We didn't see what happened. All we have is what people say." "There are witnesses," Kyrie said. "Plenty of them." Brooks glanced toward the crowd, then back at Kyrie. "Witnesses don't always agree." Kyrie felt something shift in his chest. "They do this time." Brooks didn't respond. He stepped to the side, blocking Kyrie's view of the lake, of the people who had been standing up for him. The move felt intentional. "Control the space. Control the story. Turn your body a little," Brooks said, guiding Kyrie by the elbow. "Face the car." Kyrie complied. The back of the patrol car was already open. The interior looked dark from where he stood. "I'm not trying to give you a hard time," Brooks said. His voice softened just enough to sound reasonable. "But this situation is serious. Anytime a child is involved, we have to be thorough." Kyrie swallowed. Being thorough doesn't mean assuming. Brooks' eyes narrowed slightly. "Watch your tone." Kyrie closed his mouth. He nodded once. He could feel his heartbeat in his throat now. The cold from the lake had sunk deeper, mixing with a different kind of chill. Brooks stepped away to speak to the older officer again. Kyrie watched them talk in low voices, heads tilted toward each other. Brooks gestured once toward Kyrie, then toward the lake. The older officer listened, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Kyrie tried to catch the eye of someone in the crowd. A man he remembered grabbing the child's arm earlier looked back at him, shaking his head in disbelief. A woman held her phone up, recording steadily. The child's mother stood near the ambulance, arms wrapped around her son, watching everything with wide, frightened eyes. Brooks returned. "Here's how this is going to go," he said. "We're going to take you down to the station. You'll give a statement. We'll sort out the details." "For what?" Kyrie asked. "What am I being charged with?" Brooks paused. "We're not there yet. That's not an answer." Brooks leaned in slightly. "You don't get to dictate how this works." Kyrie felt the anger flare again, hotter this time. He pushed it down hard. He knew how fast that could make things worse. "I just want this cleared up," Kyrie said, "so I can go home." Brooks looked at him for a long moment. "That depends." "On what?" "On what we find," Brooks said. The words hung there, vague and heavy. Brooks reached into the car and pulled out a pair of gloves, snapping them on with practiced ease. He checked the cuffs again, tightening them a fraction. Kyrie winced despite himself. "They're tight," Kyrie said. "They're fine," Brooks replied. The older officer approached again. "We've got statements lining up," he said quietly. "Everyone's saying the same thing." Brooks didn't look at him. "We'll review them." "Maybe we can?" "I've got it," Brooks cut in. The older officer hesitated, then stepped back. Kyrie noticed. He filed it away. Brooks opened the car door fully. "Step in." Kyrie did. He ducked his head, careful not to bump it. The seat was hard and slick under his wet clothes. Brooks closed the door, the sound final and sharp. Through the window, Kyrie watched Brooks talk to the crowd now, hands out, voice raised just enough to carry. Kyrie couldn't hear the words, but he could see the reactions. Frustration, anger, confusion. The car rocked slightly as Brooks leaned against it. He looked straight at Kyrie through the glass. Their eyes met. For a second, neither looked away. Kyrie broke the gaze first. The car door opened again. Brooks leaned in. "Do you have anything you want to add before we leave?" "Yes," Kyrie said. His voice was steady, but it took effort. "I saved that kid's life." Brooks' expression didn't change. "That's your claim." Kyrie stared at him. "That's a fact." Brooks shut the door. The engine started. The light stayed on. As the car pulled away, the crowd blurred past the window. The lake disappeared from view. The last thing Kyrie saw was the child's mother holding her son close, watching the car leave, her mouth open like she wanted to say something, but didn't know how. The ride was quiet. No radio chatter. No small talk. Just the hum of the road and the occasional turn. Kyrie shifted in the seat, wrists aching. He stared at the mesh divider in front of him, counting his breaths. At a stoplight, Brooks glanced back at him in the mirror. "You ever been in trouble before?" Brooks asked. "No." "Ever arrested?" "No." Brooks nodded, like he expected that too. First time for everything. Kyrie didn't respond. The station lights came into view. The car pulled into the lot and stopped. Brooks got out, opened the back door, and helped Kyrie out by the arm. Not roughly, not gently either, just firm. Inside, the air felt different, drier. Still, Kyrie was guided to a bench and told to sit. The cuff stayed on. Brooks filled out paperwork at a counter nearby. He spoke quietly with another officer, then with the supervisor. Kyrie caught fragments, inconsistent details. Need to verify. Better to be safe. Minutes passed, maybe more. Time felt strange, stretched thin. Finally, Brooks returned and stood in front of Kyrie. "We're going to ask you to give a formal statement," he said. "After that, we'll decide next steps." Kyrie looked up at him. "You already decided." Brooks didn't deny it. As Brooks turned to lead him down the hall, Kyrie thought back to the moment by the lake. The split second when he saw the child go under and moved without thinking. No fear, no hesitation, just instinct. Standing now under fluorescent lights, wrists bound, labeled a suspect instead of a rescuer, he understood how quickly that instinct could be twisted into something else by the wrong set of assumptions. And he knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his chest, that this wasn't just about a misunderstanding anymore. It was about who controlled the story and whether the truth would be allowed to catch up. The cuffs clicked shut before Kyrie fully understood what was happening. One moment Brooks was standing between him and the crowd, voice calm but firm, and the next his wrists were pulled behind his back, metal biting into skin that was still cold from the water. "Wait, what?" Kyrie said, twisting slightly. "What are you doing?" "Hands still," Brooks replied. His grip tightened. Not rough, but decisive, like the choice had already been made somewhere Kyrie wasn't allowed. People reacted all at once. Someone shouted, "Are you serious?" Another voice cut in, louder, angry. "He saved the kid." Phones came up higher. The sound of recording notifications mixed with raised voices and the low whine of the patrol car's lights. Kyrie looked past Brooks toward the lake. The water was calm now, like nothing had happened. The child was wrapped in a blanket near the ambulance, pressed against his mother's side. She stared back at Kyrie, eyes wide, shaking her head as if trying to undo the scene in front of her. "This is a mistake," Kyrie said. "You can't be serious." Brooks guided him a few steps away from the crowd. "You're being detained," he said. "We'll sort it out." "For what?" Kyrie asked. His voice rose despite his effort to keep it level. "For pulling a kid out of the water?" Brooks didn't answer. He adjusted the cuffs again, tighter this time, and Kyrie sucked in a breath. "Too tight," Kyrie said. "They're secure," Brooks replied. An older man stepped forward from the crowd. "Officer, I saw the whole thing," he said. That man jumped in without thinking. The kid was under. Brooks glanced at him. "Sir, step back." "I'm not stepping back," the man said. "This isn't right." Another officer moved in, positioning himself between the man and Kyrie. "Sir, please." The woman who had been recording since the ambulance arrived moved closer. "Is he under arrest?" she asked. Brooks turned toward her. "Ma'am, please keep your distance." "That's not an answer," she said. "You're putting handcuffs on him in front of everyone." Kyrie felt his face heat. He wasn't ashamed of what he'd done. He was angry at how fast it was being turned against him. "I didn't do anything wrong," he said, louder now. "There are witnesses everywhere." Brooks leaned in, his voice low. "This isn't the place for a debate." The crowd pushed back against that. Someone yelled, "Let him go." Another voice followed, "This is crazy." The energy shifted from confusion to something sharper. The air felt tight. Brooks raised a hand toward the other officers. "Let's move." Kyrie was guided toward the patrol car. His shoes dragged slightly on the pavement. Not because he was resisting, but because his legs felt heavy, like they were lagging behind his thoughts. "Mom," The child said suddenly, his voice small but clear. Kyrie turned his head. The boy was looking at him now, eyes fixed, confused. Kyrie opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know what to say that wouldn't make this worse. The mother tightened her hold on her son. She looked from Kyrie to Brooks. "He saved my baby," she said. Her voice shook. "Why are you arresting him?" Brooks stopped walking. He faced her. "Ma'am, we're still determining what happened." "I told you what happened," she said. "I told everyone." Brooks nodded once. "We'll take that into account." "That's not good enough," she said. "You're treating him like a criminal." Brooks didn't respond. He resumed walking. Kyrie was placed beside the open door of the car. The interior looked dark and narrow from where he stood. The reality of it hit him then. This wasn't just questioning anymore. This was public. This was recorded. This would follow him. "Officer," Kyrie said, "please, just listen." Brooks met his eyes. There was no anger there, just distance. "You'll have a chance to talk." "Here," Kyrie said, with all of them watching. "You're doing this backwards." Brooks closed the distance between them. "Get in the car." Kyrie hesitated for half a second. The crowd noticed. Someone yelled his name. Another person shouted, "Don't let them do this." Kyrie ducked his head and stepped inside. The door shut behind him with a dull thud that felt louder than it should have. From the back seat, he watched through the window as the scene continued without him. Brooks spoke to the crowd again, hands out, posture calm. The older officer stood nearby, arms crossed, looking uncomfortable. The mother sat on the curb now, her son in her lap, one hand covering her mouth as she cried. The car rocked slightly as Brooks leaned against it. He looked in through the window, eyes meeting Kyrie's again. Kyrie held the gaze this time. He wanted Brooks to see it. The disbelief, the certainty. Brooks looked away first. The engine started. The siren chirped once, then fell silent. As the car pulled away, the crowd blurred into shapes and colors. A few people followed on foot for a moment, still shouting, until the distance swallowed them. Kyrie leaned his head back against the seat. His wrists throbbed. His clothes were still damp, clinging uncomfortably. He focused on breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Slow. At a red light, Brooks glanced at him in the mirror. "This doesn't have to be a big deal," he said. "It already is," Kyrie replied. Brooks didn't answer. The light changed. The car moved again. Kyrie thought about how fast it had happened, how one decision, jumping into the water, had split his day into before and after. He thought about the faces in the crowd, the certainty in their voices, and how little that seemed to matter once the cuffs were on. By the time the station came into view, the lake felt far away. But the sound of the cuffs clicking shut stayed with him, sharp and unmistakable, a reminder that doing the right thing didn't protect you from being treated like you did something wrong. The footage starts before anyone notices the kid. It's just a wide, shaky view of the lake through Brooks's body cam, voices overlapping, nothing dramatic. Kyrie is in the frame early, standing back from the edge, hands at his sides. He's not yelling. He's not pushing anyone. He looks like someone watching, not someone looking for trouble. Then a woman's voice cuts through the noise. Sharp, panicked, the camera swings. A small shape splashes near the dock, arms flailing once before disappearing. The sound that follows isn't loud, but it's desperate. Kyrie moves before the officers do. You can see it clearly on the footage. No hesitation. He drops what he's holding and runs. The camera catches him passing Brooks, who turns his head, confused a half second too late. Kyrie doesn't slow down. He kicks off his shoes and goes in feet first. The water closes over him. For a moment, the camera loses sight of everything but ripples and people rushing forward. Someone yells for help. Another voice screams the child's name. Kyrie comes back up with the kid under his arm. It's messy and fast. He struggles to keep his footing as he reaches the edge. Two bystanders grab the child's arms and pull. The kid coughs hard, water spilling out. Kyrie stays in the water an extra second, one hand on the dock, breathing hard. On the footage, you hear him say he's breathing. He's breathing. An officer asks, "Is he okay?" Kyrie nods. He swallowed water. He needs a medic. The body cam shows Kyrie stepping back, giving space. He doesn't touch the kid again. He doesn't try to explain himself. He just stands there, soaked, chest rising and falling, eyes locked on the child until the ambulance arrives. Then the tone shifts. Brooks's voice comes through, calm but sharp. "Sir, step over here." Kyrie looks confused. "Why?" "Just step over here," Brooks repeats. The footage shows Kyrie complying. He walks where he's told. His hands are visible the whole time. They never clench. They never move suddenly. "You jump in the water without authorization?" Brooks asks. There's no time. Kyrie says, "The kid was under." Brooks doesn't respond to that. He asks for Kyrie's name. As Kyrie answers, someone off camera says, "That man saved my son." It's the mother. Her voice cracks. Brooks doesn't acknowledge her. He asks Kyrie if he's been drinking. Kyrie shakes his head. "No. You understand we need to figure out exactly what happened." Brooks says. "That's fine," Kyrie replies. "I'll tell you whatever you need." The camera angle shifts as Brooks steps closer. His hand reaches out of frame. The sound of cuffs clicking is loud on the audio. "What are you doing?" Kyrie asks. His voice jumps. Not angry, just surprised. "You're being detained," Brooks says. "For what?" Kyrie asks. The footage doesn't capture an answer. It captures the crowd reacting instead. Shouts, protests, phones raised. Someone says, "This is wrong." Another voice says, "He didn't do anything." The body cam keeps rolling as Kyrie is walked away. There's no struggle, no resistance. At one point, Kyrie says, "They're tight." Brooks replies, "They're fine." Later, when the footage is slowed down, people notice small details. The way Brooks doesn't ask the bystanders what they saw before cuffing Kyrie. The way he never checks Kyrie for injuries despite the cold water. The way he positions himself between Kyrie and the mother when she tries to speak. When the footage is released, it spreads fast. News stations replay the rescue on loop. Commentators pause the frame where Kyrie jumps, pointing out how far he had to swim. Legal analysts freeze the moment the cuffs go on, asking what probable cause looks like in that frame. The department releases a short statement saying the officer acted in accordance with protocol. The body cam tells a more complicated story. It shows urgency turning into control. It shows a rescuer becoming a suspect without a clear reason. Kyrie watches the footage for the first time from a small room with his lawyer. He doesn't say much. He already knows what it shows. He lived it. When the clip ends, his lawyer looks at him. "This helps," she says. Kyrie nods slowly. "I wasn't trying to be a hero," he says. "I just didn't want that kid to die." Outside that room, the footage keeps playing. On phones, on TVs, in court filings, frame by frame. It answers the question Kyrie asked at the lake and never got an answer to. What did I do wrong? The camera doesn't find a clear answer. It just shows what happened. The first witness speaks before the department finishes its statement. It's the child's mother. She posts a short video from her phone, still shaking, saying the man they arrested saved her son's life. She says there was no officer in the water. She says there was no delay. She says if Kyrie hadn't jumped, her child would have drowned. Then another bystander comes forward. A man who was fishing nearby tells a reporter he saw the whole thing. He says Kyrie was the only adult close enough to reach the child in time. He says the officers were still walking over when Kyrie was already in the water. He says the arrest didn't make sense to anyone standing there. The official report says Kyrie interfered with an active scene. The witnesses push back on that. There was no scene yet, they say. Just a child slipping under and people yelling. One woman says she screamed for help and Kyrie moved before she finished the sentence. She says the police hadn't even reached the dock. Local news gets copies of the statements. They start lining them up against the body cam footage. The timeline doesn't match the report. The report says officers issued commands before Kyrie entered the water. The video shows no commands. The report says Kyrie refused to comply after the rescue. The video shows him stepping where he's told, hands visible, voice steady. A former lifeguard weighs in on camera. He explains how fast children sink and how seconds matter. He says waiting for permission would have been deadly. He says Kyrie did exactly what any trained responder would hope a bystander would do. Online, the comments split at first, then tilt. People slow the footage down themselves. They share clips. They point out moments the report skips. The mother's voice, the lack of warnings, the way the cuffs go on without explanation. The department issues a follow-up, saying the matter is under review. That word, review, doesn't land well. People want to know why a review didn't happen before the arrest. More witnesses come forward. A teenager who helped pull the child out says no officer touched the water. An older man says he told Brooks Kyrie save the kid and was ignored. Each account adds pressure. Each one makes the official version harder to defend. Kyrie's lawyer releases a short statement backed by affidavits. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't accuse. She just lays out the facts in order and lets them sit. By the end of the week, the story the public hears no longer belongs to the department. It belongs to the people who were there. The cracks are visible now, not just in the report, but in the trust around it. The question shifts. It's no longer whether Kyrie did something wrong. It's why the system doubled down when the truth was standing right in front of it. Kyrie meets his lawyer the day after the footage goes public. He doesn't come in angry. He comes in tired. He says he hasn't slept more than an hour at a time since the arrest. He says every time he closes his eyes, he hears the cuffs click again. The lawyer doesn't interrupt. She lets him talk. She lets him explain what it felt like to go from holding a coughing child to being pushed against a squad car. She asks simple questions and writes everything down. Times, words, where each officer stood, what was said and what wasn't. When she finishes, she tells him the case isn't about opinions. It's about evidence. She tells him the video is clear. The witness statements are consistent. The report doesn't line up. She tells him this isn't just a defense. It's a civil rights case. Kyrie hesitates. He says he doesn't want attention. He says he didn't jump into the water to make a statement. He just didn't want a kid to die. She nods and says that's exactly why this matters. The first filing goes in quietly. No press conference. No speeches. Just a formal notice outlining unlawful detention, excessive force, and false arrest. It lists the body cam timestamps. It references witness affidavits. It asks for accountability. The department responds with silence. Then a short statement saying the officer acted within protocol. That word shows up again. Protocol. Kyrie reads it and feels something shift. For days he's felt small, like he did something wrong just by being there. The statement flips that. It makes him angry in a clean way. Not explosive. Focused. He agrees to speak publicly once. He sits in front of a local reporter and answers questions without notes. He doesn't insult anyone. He doesn't raise his voice. He says he would do it again. He says he'd still jump into the water. He says saving that child was never the mistake. The clip spreads. People hear how steady he sounds. They notice he never once calls himself a hero. He just keeps saying, there was a kid who needed help. More legal filings follow. Requests for internal communications. Training records. Past complaints. The case grows weight. It stops being just about one arrest and starts asking bigger questions. Kyrie starts sleeping again. Not perfectly, but enough. He goes back to the lake once, stands where it happened, and leaves without staying long. He doesn't avoid it anymore. For the first time since the cuffs came off, he feels like he's standing on his own feet. He didn't ask for this fight, but he's done letting other people tell his story for him. The city releases its findings on a Friday afternoon, the time officials use when they don't want questions. The statement says mistakes were made. It says policies will be reviewed. It doesn't say who made the mistakes or what happens next. It avoids the word accountability. Kyrie reads it once, then again, and feels the same hollow pause he felt when the cuffs closed. Not anger this time, recognition. This is how institutions protect themselves. The lawsuit moves forward anyway. Depositions are scheduled. Timelines are locked in. Under oath, The story can't bend the way press statements do. Officer Brooks answers questions about what he saw and when he saw it. He's asked why he didn't speak to witnesses before detaining Kyrie. He's asked why commands appear on paper that don't appear on video. He pauses often. He says he doesn't recall. The department's attorneys argue the arrest was a judgment call made under pressure. Kyrie's lawyer asks a simple follow-up. Pressure compared to what? A drowning child. A man who just pulled that child out. A crowd pointing and explaining. The answer doesn't come. The child's parents attend one hearing and sit quietly in the back. They don't speak to reporters. They don't need to. Their presence is enough. Everyone in the room knows why Kyrie moved when he did. Everyone knows what would have happened if he hadn't. As the case stretches on, Kyrie's name starts showing up in places he never expected. Training seminars, community forums, college classes that talk about bystander intervention and police discretion. People ask him to speak. At first he says no. He doesn't want to become a symbol. Then he realizes he already is one, whether he shows up or not. He starts saying yes carefully. When he sits in front of a room, he doesn't lecture. He tells the story straight. He talks about the water and the weight of a small body going still. He talks about the relief when the child coughed. He talks about how fast relief can turn. He doesn't ask for sympathy. He asks for honesty. He asks people to think about what they'd want someone to do if it were their kid. The city settles before trial. The number is significant, but not flashy. Enough to admit fault without saying the words. The agreement includes policy changes and mandatory training updates, body cam procedures, scene assessment, a requirement to interview witnesses before detaining a rescuer unless there's immediate danger. It's not perfect. It's something. Officer Brooks is reassigned, not fired. Kyrie notices that detail and lets it sit. Change rarely comes clean. It comes in pieces, argued over, delayed. He learns to accept partial wins without calling them complete. On the anniversary of the incident, Kyrie goes back to the lake with no cameras around. The water looks ordinary. Kids laugh on the far side. Parents watch more closely than they did before. He stands there for a few minutes and leaves. He doesn't need to prove anything to that place anymore. People still stop him, sometimes. They say thank you. They say they'd do the same. He tells them he hopes they would. He tells them he hopes they won't have to choose between helping and being believed. The case becomes a reference point. When another bystander hesitates, someone mentions Kyrie. When departments revise training, his name appears in footnotes. It's strange, living inside a lesson. He doesn't love it. He understands it. What stays with him most isn't the money or the statements or the policy updates. It's the moment right after the rescue when the child breathed and the crowd exhaled together. That's the standard he holds on to. That shared understanding of what mattered. He knows not every story ends this way. He knows some people never get footage or witnesses or lawyers who listen. That knowledge sharpens the quiet responsibility he feels now. When he speaks for the gap between what should happen and what often does. Doing good shouldn't require courage twice. It shouldn't demand proof beyond the act itself. But until systems catch up with that truth, people like Kyrie will keep paying the cost of stepping forward at the wrong moment. He doesn't regret jumping. He never will. If the price of that choice is telling the story until it lands where it needs to, he's willing to pay it. The child lived. The truth surfaced. The rest is work, and work can be done. Thank you for watching this video. Hit the subscribe button, like, and comment to get more videos that deserves justice.